Barelas is the second oldest neighborhood in Albuquerque, and the church in Barelas, Sacred Heart, is the second oldest church in Albuquerque and in New Mexico. Barelas is a very traditional, old-fashioned community. They've been kind of doing the same thing traditionally for the last 400 years or so. They don't really like a lot of new things. They like the tradition. They like to do things the way they've always done them. My name is Steve Burke, and I am a technical writer for AFRL Luz Academy. And on the weekends, I also come to Sacred Heart Church, and I play the organ and lead the choir.
Scoff at me. I am forgotten like the unremembered dead. I am like a dish that is broken. Father.
I've been doing Mass here since the summer of 2002. So it was right after the events of September 11 of 2001. It was the following summer that I started here. I was at St. Charles Borromeo Church at the time, and I was the organist there. And the music director at that church came and told me one day that he knew someone at Sacred Heart that was in dire need of an organist, and his name was Father John Moore. I said, okay, I'll be happy to go talk to him if you want. And so I came down to Sacred Heart Church, and it was kind of interesting. I was in my little job interview in the Father's office. In the middle of the interview, his phone rang. And he said, excuse me a minute, and he picked it up. He starts talking to them about some beams that he's trying to get. And he's negotiating with someone on the other end of the line, and he gets mad at one point, and he says, well, maybe we just don't want your beams, and he kind of hangs up the phone. I come to find out later, no, he's talking to someone about the beams from the World Trade Center in New York City coming here and becoming part of our little 9/11 Memorial Chapel. Over time, I began to realize the historical significance of the beams and how they relate to the entire history of this church, because the original church was built in 1903, and it was built actually catty corner across the street from here in what is now an empty dirt lot. About 30 or 40 years ago, I guess it is now, someone decided that the church, for whatever reason, was structurally unsound. And so they decided they had to level the building, and they were going to raise a bunch of money to build a new church. Meantime, across the street over here where the church is now was a school gymnasium. They set up the church temporarily in the school gymnasium while they worked on raising the money to build this new church. But what had been the temporary home of this church and this gymnasium eventually became the permanent home of the church when they realized they weren't going to have the money to build the one that they wanted. And they have no bell tower. So the bell tower in the old church had a big 3,000-pound bell that went missing. This community, being so traditionally oriented like they are, they love their connection with the old things, and they wanted to salvage and bring over as much of the old church as they could and put it in the new church. So like the pews are from the old church, the statues and things are from the old church, but some of the big things like the bell disappeared. No one knew where it was. But they also didn't have a bell tower in this gymnasium to house it. So around about the time that September 11 happened, somebody discovered the bell. They were all excited. They really wanted to build a bell tower. However, they had a problem in that the Sacred Heart Church is the poorest parish in the entire Archdiocese of Santa Fe. So they don't have the money to build the bell tower into this gymnasium. They needed a way to raise the money, and right about that time, that's when September 11 happened.
We have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
We had a couple of parishioners in the church that were a little more wealthy and well-connected politically. The two of them had this idea for how they could take the September 11 saga and use that as leverage to help us build a bell tower, and that they decided that if they could get their hands on those beams, that they could work with that as a way to build the bell tower. So one of them knew Mayor Giuliani over in New York. Called him up, said, can we have the beams from the World Trade Center? And Mayor Giuliani said, yes, absolutely. And Father Moore got on a plane and flew out to New York, and they did a little prayer, and then they drove them back here. And first thing they do is they bring the beams to the First Plaza downtown, and Mayor Marty Chavez at the time was the mayor. He had a little ceremony, and then they brought the beams back, and they actually set them down in the parking lot where the old church used to stand. They blocked the street off, and they set the bell down in the middle of the street in front of the church, and they brought over a big fire truck, and they extended the ladder all the way up and had a great big flag hanging down from the top of the ladder. While all of this is happening, all of these contractors now have gotten involved, so they've all agreed to donate their time and their materials to help build our bell tower.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
One of the lasting things that has come out of all this is that we do a annual 9/11 memorial mass on September 11 each year. Somehow just knowing that these beams were here and that it was being used in this way helped people recover in this community a little more from that trauma. Now New York and Albuquerque will always have this eternal connection between them, that's this bond that's never going to be broken. So I think it's just a great thing that they've done.